My name is Katrine. I'm 28, and I work in finance, a world where numbers decide who life smiles upon and who gets left with exhaustion and coffee in a plastic cup. That Tuesday morning began as usual. Coffee from the vending machine, reports, faceless phone calls, all those rituals that keep the office reality in balance. And then, an internal line call. The secretary's voice, as dry as corporate policy itself. "Mr. Rodriguez would like to see you." My heart gave a sudden jolt. I knocked, entered. The office was flooded with cold light from the blinds. My boss, Mr. Rodriguez, sat behind his massive wooden desk like a man accustomed to the weight of decisions. His desk always reminded me of a chessboard, neatly arranged papers, a laptop in the center, a coffee cup. Like a king no one would dare touch. "Katrin, have a seat," he said, his voice calmer than the expression on his face. "We need to discuss something." I sat down, trying to read between the wrinkles on his forehead what the conversation would be about. He didn't look angry, rather pensive. "I've been watching your work for a long time," he began, clasping his hands in front of him. "Your reports are impeccable, and the whole Morrison account situation. Frankly, you pulled us out of a potential nightmare. The company saved a lot of money thanks to you." I felt a wave of anxious excitement rising in my chest. It sounded like the beginning of the conversation I had been dreaming of for the last 2 years. "Thank you," I said, trying not to smile too broadly. He nodded. "That's precisely why I want to offer you something more. We're opening a new branch in Dallas, and I want you to go there. Senior financial analyst, a promotion, better salary, a new project from the ground up." The world seemed to expand around me. A promotion. Finally. Everything I had prayed for in my thoughts when another favorite got the position for which I had done half the damn work. "That sounds amazing," I exhaled. "What about the salary?" He smiled slightly, as if he already knew that question was coming. 15,000 more a year, plus relocation compensation, and the prospect of a managerial position within a couple of years. 15,000. That wasn't just money. It was a breather. Freedom. The chance to no longer treat every trip to the supermarket as a strategic operation. And yet, as the numbers settled in my head, reality hit me. Dallas. An 8-hour drive from home. From my family. "How much time do I have to think about it?" I asked. "Until Friday," he replied. "I know it's not an easy decision, especially with your family situation. But think about the future, Katrin. Sometimes you have to take a risk to one day become the one who makes the decisions yourself." I nodded and left the office as if walking through thick air. His words rang in my head. Your family situation. He knew about it. Of course he did. I had refused to go to conferences or stay late more than once because things were waiting for me at home that I couldn't turn away from. Let me explain. I have a family where no one but me ever had a chance to break free. I'm the eldest of 3. Our parents are simple, kind people, but life just happened to them without asking for permission. Dad works in construction, as long as his back holds out. Mom used to work in a store. Now she's at home, with bad joints and eternal patience. The younger ones, Jake and Maya, live as best they can. Jake carries boxes in a warehouse. Maya cycles through retail jobs as if searching for one that doesn't cut to the quick. They try, but they don't succeed. And I guess I was the one who was supposed to be the proof that we could make it too. I was always lucky with numbers and books. Our parents were proud of that. Every time I brought home an A, Mom would say, "That's because we raised you right. We made sure you read, studied, didn't fool around." And I would nod, even though I knew that most evenings they were just too tired to notice what I was doing. But still, they tried, as much as they could. I got a scholarship, went to college, graduated without debt, and for them, it was an event they told all the neighbors about. When I got the job at this company, they seemed to feel like their own lives had gotten a second wind, and that I now owed them something more than just Sunday phone calls. It all started with me just helping. At first, it seemed natural, almost automatic, a gesture of love, gratitude, duty, whatever. Mom needed $200 to fix the old sedan that always stalled at the worst possible moment. Dad needed $300 for medical bills after another doctor's visit. Jake asked to borrow some money for a rental deposit, just for a couple of weeks. Maya needed a new uniform for her shop job, and how could I say no? It all seemed innocent, temporary, like little handouts from a daughter who, quote, was doing well. But then Mom stopped working altogether. Arthritis took away her ability to stand behind a counter, and with it went the money and the habit of self-reliance. The mortgage weighed heavily on Dad, and I started helping them with the payments, temporarily, until Mom got better. Only she never got better. At some point, I just realized that all the financial threads now led to me. I was the family ATM, the on-duty rescuer, the person on whom it depended whether the lights stayed on, the medicine was bought, and the fridge wasn't empty. I earned enough not to complain, but not enough to support 5 adults. After my payments to them, I lived on the leftovers, a tiny apartment with peeling walls, a constant battle with a fridge that held, at most, milk and bananas, and a car that groaned every time the engine started. I hadn't had a vacation in 3 years, not because I didn't want one, but because every time an extra sum appeared on the horizon, someone needed help. But that's family, right? And family isn't a bank account. It's something sacred. Mom would say, "You're our angel, Katrin. We don't know what we'd do without you." And those words warmed me. When you have nothing of your own, at least recognition gives you a sense that your life isn't wasted. That Saturday, I drove to my parents' place, as always, with a plastic container of salad that I knew no one would touch. Dinner with us was like a ritual. Roast, the smell of spices, the old table with a dent in the middle, conversations about the weather, the news, the neighbors. Everything so familiar it seemed like time had stopped. Only this time, I knew. Something was going to change. After the meal, I folded my hands on the table, feeling my fingers tremble slightly. "I need to tell you something," I began, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "This week, my boss offered me a promotion in Dallas. It means I'll have to move." Silence fell instantly. Even the clock on the wall seemed to freeze. Mom turned pale as if I had announced my own death. "You can't leave us, Katrin," she exhaled, gripping the edge of the table. "You can't just abandon your family like that." "I'm not abandoning you," I said, feeling everything inside me clench. "It's just a job, an opportunity I can't ignore." But Mom was already crying, real tears, heavy with reproach. "If you leave, everything will fall apart," she sobbed. "We won't manage. Your help, the mortgage, my medicine, your father's back problems. You understand, without you, we just can't make it." Dad looked up from his plate, frowned, and said in a hollow voice, "Your mother is right. Families should stick together. Money isn't everything." Jake shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "What about my rent? I won't be able to pay if you stop helping. They cut my hours at the warehouse again last week." Maya, crossing her arms, added, "I just started a new job, and I'm not sure I can pay the bills if I don't have a safety net. You always helped out, Katrin." I looked at them. My family, the people I got up for every morning, the people I sacrificed everything for, and felt everything inside me crumbling. Their faces were distorted with fear, but not for me, for themselves. And that made it especially painful. "Okay," I exhaled, feeling the words stick in my throat. "Okay, I won't take the offer. I'll stay." Mom's tears dried as suddenly as they had appeared. She smiled through her weariness and relief, reached out to me, and said, "I knew you'd make the right decision. You're such a good daughter." Everyone at the table seemed to relax at once. Jake went back to his phone, Maya went to get dessert, Dad poured himself some tea, and I sat in silence, with an emptiness in my chest. It felt like I had just closed the door on a life that could have been mine. On Monday, I walked into Mr. Rodriguez's office. He looked up from his papers, understanding immediately. "So, you've decided to stay," he said without judgment, but with a shadow of disappointment. I nodded. "Yes, I can't leave. My family, they need me." He leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Family obligations are difficult," he said. "But Katrin, think about this. Make sure your relationship with them is truly equal. Sometimes love turns into a habit of duty. I didn't fully understand what he meant, but I smiled and thanked him. I had made my choice. I had stayed. To take care. To be needed. To save everyone except myself. 3 weeks had passed since that conversation with Mr. Rodriguez. 3 weeks since I had chosen stability over a chance, fear over movement, habit over the future. I was back to living in survival mode. Office, reports, sleepless nights, perpetual coffee, and a feeling that I was turning into an automaton created to pay other people's bills. My life had narrowed back down to numbers in spreadsheets and messages asking for money. My salary would hit my card and almost immediately disappear. My parents' mortgage, mom's physical therapy sessions, medicine, gas, utilities. I covered it all without complaint because what else could I do? If not me, then who? Sometimes I stayed at the office until midnight. The light from the lamp fell on the papers. My eyes stung, but I couldn't stop. The more I worked, the calmer I felt. Because every extra shift, every overtime line was a guarantee that Mom could pay the doctor, that Maya wouldn't get evicted, that Jake wouldn't ask to borrow just until Friday. One evening, Jessica, a friend from college, texted me. She always had what I lacked: lightness. "Hey, Katrin," she wrote, "let's fly to Miami for the long weekend. I found a gorgeous hotel and everything together, flight, accommodation, food, is less than $800. We just need some sun and cocktails. You have to agree." I looked at my phone screen, at those words, and felt a strange tingling in my chest. $800. It was almost a dream, a real life. Wind, sea, lightness, where no one called you savior. But then I remembered Jake, who a week ago had complained that his phone had finally died. He didn't say it directly, but in his usual way, half jokingly, but with that look that always made me give in. A new smartphone cost about the same as the trip. I didn't even have time to think. I was already typing to Jessica, "No, I can't. Family stuff." She sent a sad-faced emoji and something like, "You deserve a break, Em." But I knew I didn't deserve it. I was just doing what I had to. When Mom called and thanked me for paying for her massage, or Dad said they wouldn't manage without me, my heart filled with something resembling pride. It was like a quiet addiction, painful, but necessary. And then Tuesday came, an ordinary day, no different from any other. I was sitting at my desk, staring at budget spreadsheets, when Mom lit up on the screen. That contact always evoked conflicting feelings in me, anxiety and warmth at the same time. "Hi, Mom," I answered, hoping the call was just casual. "Is something wrong?" "Hi, sweetie," she said, and I immediately recognized that tone of hers, soft with a guilty note. The voice that always meant another small question was coming. "I hate to bother you, but we have a little problem here." I already knew. A sum of money was about to be mentioned. "What kind of problem?" I asked, even though the answer was obvious. "Well, the sink is leaking. Your father tried to fix it himself, but I think he just made it worse. Now the cabinet under it is warped, and we need to call a plumber. We found a guy. He said the repair would be around $400. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes. 400. Not a catastrophe, but not small change either. In the last 2 weeks, I had already paid their mortgage, covered Maya's car repair, and part of the medicine bill. The amount left in my account was something to laugh or cry about. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll transfer it tomorrow morning." "Oh, Katrin, you're a lifesaver," Mom exclaimed, and I heard her voice trembling with relief. "I don't know what we'd do without you, dear. You're our only hope. Your father and I didn't sleep all night. We were so worried, but I told him, 'Don't worry. Katrin will sort it out. She always comes through.'" I closed my eyes, feeling a warmth spreading inside me. Those words worked like morphine. They plugged the doubts, dulled the fatigue, made me believe everything was right. "Okay, Mom, it'll be fine," I said. "I'll transfer it as soon as I get my advance." We said goodbye, and I was already about to end the call when I realized the connection was still active. Mom had apparently forgotten to hang up. I was about to press end, but then her voice came through the speaker, no longer affectionate, not the one she used with me. "Well, thank God," she said to someone in the room. "I told you she'd transfer it. She's never any trouble." "And if she hadn't?" came Dad's low voice. "Where would she go?" Mom chuckled. "She can't refuse. She's always worried we won't manage without her. It's even convenient." Everything inside me dropped. I sat there, rooted to the spot, listening to those words, not believing I was hearing them for real, that it was her, my mother, saying this, the one for whom I worked nights, saved, denied myself everything. I heard Mom pouring tea, rustling a bag, continuing the conversation calmly, as if she hadn't just stabbed me in the heart. "Just don't push it too far," Dad added. "She might get tired someday." "She won't get tired," Mom retorted. "That's just how she is. She needs to be praised. Say a couple of warm words, and that's it. Problem solved." I listened and couldn't breathe. Every sound felt like a blow to the ribs. In that moment, I understood that maybe Mr. Rodriguez had been right. Maybe it wasn't love, but something else. A tenacious dependency where they held me not by the heart, but by guilt. "Well, that was easy enough," Mom said, and I barely recognized her voice. It was alien, cold, dry, as if all the warmth she always used with me had been scooped out. Little Miss Martyr saves the day again. I froze. My heart beat faster, blood pounded in my ears. What did she mean? $400 for a sink I could have fixed myself with $20 in parts. Dad chuckled, and there wasn't a hint of shame in that chuckle. Then he laughed, low and loud, as if he'd said something brilliant. "But why should I bother when we have a personal ATM that's eager to help?" I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, feeling my palms grow damp. My throat constricted so much I couldn't take a breath. "She's so pathetic," Mom continued, and a note of irritation rang in her voice, as if she were talking about something unpleasant that wouldn't wash off. "Always so desperate to be needed. That's what family is for." She mimicked me in a shrill tone that sent shivers down my spine. God, she just gets on my nerves sometimes. At least she's useful. A second later, I heard Jake's voice. He was there. They were all there. "Yeah, she could be more helpful," he muttered, crunching on something. "I've been hinting about a phone for weeks, and she's dragging her feet. My old wreck barely turns on. Is she being stingy or what?" "Maybe be more insistent," Maya chimed in. "I just tell her I need money for a new uniform or that the car broke down again. Works like a charm." And they all laughed. Together. My heart felt like it was ripped out of my chest and thrown under the table. "Remember when she turned down that job in Dallas?" Dad said, laughing. "I thought we were done for. But thank God your mom put on that show with the tears." Mom snorted proudly. I should have gotten an Oscar for that scene. As soon as she mentioned moving, I knew what to do. A couple of tears, a little guilt, like, "You're abandoning the family," and bam, she stayed, like an obedient little piggy bank. I listened, disbelieving. My whole body was trembling. "She thinks we actually value her," Mom said. "But in reality, she's nothing special, just a convenient source of money. If she suddenly stopped paying for everything, I'd drop her the same day." "Love her, ha," Dad added with a contemptuous chuckle. "I never wanted her. She was a mistake, an accident. We were young and stupid then. A kid ruined everything. Because of her, we didn't go to college, didn't get out of this damn town." The world swayed around me. My vision darkened. I wanted to end the call, but I couldn't move. "The best part," Maya said, "is how she blames herself for everything. You don't even need to prove anything to her. Just hint, and she'll transfer the money even if she has to eat instant noodles for a week." "Well, keep at it then," Jake replied. "Next time, just say you'll get fired without the new uniform, that's all. She'll bite." They laughed again. That laughter was like a blade. Cold, cutting, alien. The laughter of people who had just skinned me and were examining what was underneath. I hung up. My hands were shaking. The phone almost slipped out. For a few seconds, I just sat there, staring into emptiness, trying to understand how $400 had led to this, the complete exposure of the lie on which my entire life was built. My fingers automatically typed the password on my work computer. I tried to keep typing numbers, moving the cursor across the screen, but I saw nothing. Only their faces flashed before my eyes. Mom with her soft eyes, Dad, always serious, Maya and Jake, whom I had saved from debt so many times, and all of them were laughing. I don't know how much time passed, minutes, hours. Everything merged into one gray void. I transferred the $400 because otherwise I couldn't breathe. Habit was stronger than pain. Then I gathered my things and drove home. The car was filled with a silence so thick it seemed if I spoke, I would fall apart. When I got to my apartment, I just collapsed on the sofa. The ceiling blurred above my eyes. The world seemed sticky, viscous, alien. I felt nothing but cold. My phone vibrated. Once, twice, 3 times. I didn't pick it up for a long time. Finally, I opened the screen, a notification from Mom. The message glowed like a mockery. "Thank you, dear, for helping with the sink repair. You're a miracle. Love you." I read it 3 times. The same words, the same sweet tone that used to feel like warmth. Only now I heard the poison in it. In every "love you" sounded "we use you." In every "dear," naive. And then it hit me. I had never been a daughter to them. I was a function, a source of money, a habit no one intended to break. I spent the whole evening in a kind of painful stupor, going back again and again to their voices, to those laughing, alien, vile sounds that dissolved all my years of self-sacrifice. I saw us at dinner, Mom serving soup, Dad nodding gratefully to me, Maya talking about work, Jake asking me for a 20 until Friday. It all seemed like a stage, cheap, poorly acted, where I was the only one who didn't know it was a play. The worst part wasn't that they used me, but that I had willingly allowed them to do it, believing in the illusion, in a warmth that never existed. And suddenly I realized that Mr. Rodriguez had tried to tell me. His words about equal relationships, about thinking what I was sacrificing myself for, now sounded with a different intonation, not businesslike, but almost fatherly. He had seen me stuck in a swamp I wasn't even trying to escape from. They weren't afraid of losing me that day, when I was hesitating between my career and home. No, they were just afraid of losing their endless source of money and care. The next morning, I walked to work as if through a fog. The world was flat, faces were featureless, but beneath this numbness, something was stirring quietly. Not anger, not resentment, but a strange, fresh feeling, as if someone had finally removed an old, heavy veil from me. For the first time in a long time, I saw everything clearly. Around 10, I stopped outside Rodriguez's office, knocked. "Katrin, come in," he said, looking up from his monitor. "How are you?" I took a breath. "I thought about what you said back then, about family and about equality. You were right. It's all unhealthy. Completely." My voice sounded even, without a tremble, as if everything was already decided. "Is that position in Dallas still available?" He was thoughtful for a second, then the corners of his lips twitched. "Yes, it's available. Are you ready?" "Yes, as soon as possible." He nodded slowly, asking no questions, as if he already understood everything. "Good for you. You'll do well. When can you start?" "In a couple of weeks. I need to wrap up some things, break the lease, sell the furniture." "Take as much time as you need. I'll start the paperwork today." When I left his office, my chest felt strangely light. Not happy, just free. As if I had finally stopped apologizing to the whole world for wanting to live for myself. That same day, I dialed Mr. Peterson, my landlord. He'd always treated me humanely. A quiet, kind old man with a perpetually crumpled jacket and a smile that smelled of mint. "Hello, Mr. Peterson. It's Katrin from 4B. I'm planning to move. Work is calling me to another state. Family circumstances are complicated. I want to leave as soon as possible. I know I need to give 30 days notice, but maybe we can work something out." He was silent for a moment, and I prepared for a long lecture about rules and deadlines. But he simply said, "You've been a model tenant, Miss Katrin. No complaints, no delays. When do you want to move out?" "In 2 weeks, if that's possible." "Let's make it next Friday. No penalties. You've earned a little flexibility." I exhaled as if I had taken my first breath in 24 hours. Thank you so much. That really means a lot. The next few days passed in a fever. I sold furniture, hauled boxes, called realtors in Dallas. In the evenings, I fell asleep on the floor among packing plastic and open suitcases. Every item I packed away seemed like a piece of the old life I needed to get rid of before it dragged me down again. The strangest thing, no one from the family called. Not a single message. Not one request. No complaints. No, "How are you, sweetie?" Absolute silence. And this silence was scarier than any reproach. It meant they truly didn't care. And at the same time, that I was finally free. I hired movers for Thursday, took Friday off, and gave myself exactly 2 days to finish everything down to the last nail. When it was time to hand the keys to Mr. Peterson, I felt as if I was shedding not just an old rental, but a whole life I hadn't lived. "Before I go, can I ask you for something?" I said, clutching the key ring. "If anyone comes looking for me, especially my family, please don't tell them where I went. Just say I moved out, that's all." He frowned, looking at me with concern. "Is everything all right, Miss Katrin?" I smiled slightly. "It will be now. I just need a clean break. No explanations, no justifications." He nodded slowly with an understanding I hadn't expected. "All right, for anyone who asks, you just disappeared." I bought him a bottle of wine as a thank you and handed it to him with a slight bow. He took it, smiling somewhat bewilderedly. "Take care of yourself, Katrin. The world can be cruel sometimes, but there are still good people in it," I replied. "I hope I meet them in Dallas." And as I walked out of the building, keys in one hand and my passport in the other, it seemed the air around me had changed. Clean, new, unaware of my past. On Saturday morning, I simply got in the car and drove. No dramatic look in the mirror, no tearful goodbyes to the empty apartment. My whole life fit in the trunk. A few boxes of belongings, a laptop, a couple of books, and a suitcase of clothes. 8 hours on the road. 8 hours of clean air that smelled not of duty or fatigue, but of freedom. The radio hummed quietly. The sun rose slowly, as if it didn't want to scare away this fragile feeling. I finally belonged to myself. Dallas greeted me with noise, dust, heat, and new faces that held no shadow of expectation. I rented a modest but clean apartment, bought bed linen that smelled of fresh cotton, and ordered myself dinner. For the first time in a long time. Just for me. Not for anyone else. Everything felt strangely right. Monday began with me standing in front of the mirror in a new blazer, getting ready for work. My heart beat anxiously but pleasantly. When I entered my new office, I was met with friendly smiles and a cup of coffee with my name on it, already waiting on my desk. People listened when I spoke. They didn't interrupt, didn't treat me like background noise. They actually listened. For the first time in many years, I felt I was doing something meaningful, that my work was mine, not someone else's. 3 days later, the phone rang. The name on the screen flashed like a burn. Mom. I stared at it, not moving, until the call faded. An hour later, again. Then in the evening. I didn't answer once. The next day, a message arrived. "Haven't heard from you in a while, dear. Your father and I thought we'd stop by this weekend. We miss you." I smirked. "Of course you miss me. You miss the transfers, the cards, the money for repairs, our Katrin who will fix everything." I deleted the message and didn't even feel a pang of guilt. A couple of days later, the others joined in. Jake called almost daily. Maya wrote something about needing to talk. Dad, who for years hadn't found the words to ask how I was, suddenly was interested if everything was all right with me. I didn't answer anyone. And the more the phone rang, the calmer I became. Every missed call was like a breath of fresh air. One evening, as I was coming home from work, a new message came from Mom. "The mortgage payment is due tomorrow. You didn't forget to transfer the money, did you?" I caught myself smiling. A real, quiet, almost childlike smile. "No, Mom. I didn't forget anything. It's just not my concern anymore." I put the phone on the table and went to pour myself some wine. The following week turned into a symphony of desperation. 10 calls a day, messages with ellipses. "We need to talk. You're worrying us." I imagined them sitting in the living room, talking amongst themselves, devising new scenarios. Jake was probably pounding the table, complaining I'd ruined his plans. Maya was pacing back and forth, feigning concern, and Mom was rehearsing another speech about family bonds. A whole play with no audience. After a week, Mom finally wrote that she had come to my place and found the apartment empty. "Where are you, Katrin? My God, we're going crazy with worry. Peterson said you moved out but didn't explain anything else." I laughed so loud the neighbor probably heard me through the wall. The old man kept his word. I poured myself more wine and put my phone on silent. After that, the hysterics began. Messages came one after another like gunshots. They even called my work. But HR, warned in advance, politely said no, Katrin worked there. And somewhere deep down, I felt a strange pride in myself. I was finally not the person who justifies and saves. I was the person who disappears when she decides to disappear. A few days later, I opened my laptop and realized I had to put a full stop, once and for all. Not with a word, not with a call, with a letter. So they could see, in black and white, everything I now knew, everything I would no longer forgive. "Mom," I began, "I heard your conversation after the call about the sink. I heard every word. How you laughed at me, how Dad said I was an accident, how you all discussed how convenient it was to have me around. I know everything now. About the show with the tears, about your game of love, about the fact that for you, I'm just an ATM. Well, the ATM is closed. Not another cent. Don't look for me. Don't call. I'm changing my number, and I don't want to know what happens to you. I hope one day you realize what you've lost, but I don't care anymore." I read the letter twice, then pressed send and simply closed the laptop. No tears, no trembling. There was a silence in my chest, the kind that only comes after a storm when everything is washed clean. The reply came in the morning, a huge disjointed text. Mom wrote that after my letter, her heart had acted up, that she'd been in the hospital, that Maya had called her in tears, that they all wanted to apologize, meet, fix everything. I read it, feeling nausea rise inside me. Even now, after everything, they were still trying to pull the strings. The old trick: pity, guilt, illness. I just closed the letter without even finishing it. No replies, no justifications. I chose silence, and it turned out to be louder than any scream. True to my word, I changed my number that same Monday. The old phone with their numbers and messages I simply turned off and threw in a desk drawer, as if burying the past. On social media, I set up blocks, added filters so emails from their addresses went straight to spam. And when it was all done, I closed the laptop and just sat in silence. It wasn't emptiness. It was liberation. As if after years underwater, I had finally surfaced and taken a full breath of air. I was truly free. Of them, of their needs, their expectations, their constant, "You understand, we can't manage without you." And you know what? It was magnificent. The work in Dallas was going better than I could have dreamed. Mr. Rodriguez didn't just praise. He trusted, listened, consulted. For the first time, I felt not like a subordinate, but part of something important. 2 months after starting, I got a promotion, and when he announced it at a meeting, I almost cried right there in front of everyone. Not even from joy, but from surprise. I had lived for so many years in a world where all my effort was taken for granted that I simply didn't know how to react when I was valued. Now that I didn't have to pay other people's bills, I had real money, my own, not leftovers after all the transfers, but a full salary that belonged only to me. I bought myself a few new dresses, not cheap ones, but ones that fit perfectly and made me stand straight. I replaced my car, choosing one I hadn't even dared to dream about before. I started saving for a down payment on a house. I used to think a house was about walls and a roof. Now I understand. It's about roots, about your own place in the world. And then there was the vacation. Jessica, my colleague, kept persuading me, "Let's go to Miami. You deserve it." I kept refusing, like someone who had forgotten how to allow herself pleasure. But one day, I just bought a ticket. We spent 4 days in the sun, ate ice cream by the ocean, laughed without checking our phones, and for the first time in years, I felt I was living. 6 months have passed since then. I haven't spoken to my family all this time. I don't know how they're doing. And honestly, I don't want to know. Maybe Dad finally learned to fix that damn sink. Maybe Jake got a proper job. Maybe Maya realized that adult life isn't someone else's charity. Or maybe they're still sitting there, waiting for me to come back. It doesn't matter. Their life is their problem. Sometimes an old acquaintance mentions they saw them in town. I just nod, and they, taking the hint, change the subject. I don't need news from that world. Everything I need, I already have. Now I'm finally saving. I opened an account where I transfer part of each paycheck, and every time I look at the growing numbers, I feel a quiet pride. I think about the future, about a house, about studying. Maybe I'll get an MBA to move further ahead. Everything I once deprived myself of for others is now becoming possible. But the main thing is, I relate to myself differently. I used to think love was about endless giving, that being needed meant being good. But in reality, I was just allowing 4 adults to parasitize my conscience. That's not care. It's slow suicide disguised as kindness. Now I still help people, but differently. On weekends, I teach classes in a financial literacy program, telling people how to budget, how to avoid debt. Sometimes I look at the listeners and see myself, the old, confused, desperately trying to be right me. And when they thank me, I smile because now my help doesn't make me less. It makes me stronger. I mentor younger female colleagues, tell them not to be afraid to demand respect and decent pay. I donate to organizations that help those who genuinely want to stand on their own feet. And not once during all this time have I felt like I was setting myself on fire to keep someone else warm. Sometimes someone asks, "Do you miss them? Your family?" I just answer, "No." Because you can't miss people who never loved you, and you can't feel guilty for no longer being their victim. I'm 29. I live in a city where the sun seems kinder. I work in a position I used to be afraid to dream of. I save money not for others' debts, but for my own dreams. I have friends who call not because they need something, but because they're genuinely interested in how I am. And every day I wake up with the feeling that my life finally belongs to me. A month ago, I just took off and drove to Austin. For no reason, with no plans. I booked a room in a nice hotel, dined in restaurants with quiet live music, bought myself a silver necklace I'd had my eye on for a while. I spent $800, the same amount I used to give my family every month. In the evening, I sat by the pool with a cocktail and a book, watching the sunset reflect in the water, and thought about my past life. About that tired woman who worked nights to pay others' bills, lived in a rented cage, drove a car that stalled at every intersection, and still felt obliged to save everyone else. That was all over. I remembered that day, that conversation, the accidentally overheard call that destroyed everything but simultaneously freed me, and I realized sometimes life saves you in the most painful way. If I hadn't heard them then, I would still be living a lie, believing that love is duty. And now I was simply living, and that turned out to be enough.